How important is it that both the Yankees and Posada seem to be moving on?
Yeah, I think it's good that they're both on the same page here. Posada is not complaining. It looks like to be going pretty smoothly. I think he understood throughout the year that he was not going to be back, that this was going to be his last year in pinstripes. He is an iconic Yankee. There's no question about that. Whether he played this coming year or not, that remains the same. I personally hope that he hangs it up. I think he is a borderline Hall of Famer. He's had a terrific career, and I don't want to remember him hanging on somewhere else. I think he could probably play, as Willie said, left-handed bat, occasional catcher for somebody else. I see Miami as a possibility, maybe even Baltimore or Tampa. There are probably a few possibilities out there for him, but I'd like to see him retire right now as a Yankee.
Well, I've got a question from A-Rod13 fan via MySNetwork.com, and Joel, I'll direct it to you because I know you've tweeted about the Rays' interest in first base and DH. He asked, will Posada retire or play for another team in 2012? To you, is the Rays, is that a fit?
Well, I think John mentioned the teams, Rays, Orioles, Marlins. He lives in Florida. I happen to think that Jorge Posada could still play. I think he'll be able to hit a fastball until he gets his AARP card. And we saw that Jason Giambi is a guy who left the Yankees, and he's made it like a second career as a pinch hitter, sometimes first baseman with Colorado, a guy who knows a little about winning. I think Jorge Posada knows even more. I hate when we retire a guy before he's ready. You know, there's two different models for this, right? David Cohn, who works for Yes, talked about all 30 teams were going to have to pull the uniform off, and people like Paul O'Neill, who worked for Yes, decided when they couldn't play at a certain level to walk away. I really think this is a personal choice. I think Jorge Posada could go someplace else, hit 100, and that's not going to soil his legacy as a Yankee at all. He has 5 championship rings. He was a key player on 4 of those as recently as 2009. He's one of the 10 best offensive catchers in the history of the game. He could go hit 100 someplace else, and he's going to be remembered as a great Yankee.
And obviously, we'll be keeping our eyes on what happens here on Yankees Baseball Daily with Jorge Posada. In the meantime, let's talk about the guys that remain in place, and one guy that will be back. We know this is Russell Martin, who in his first year, Willie, I think, coming from the Dodgers, nobody knew what to expect, but he was kind of a revelation for him.
Oh, I tell you, that was a great acquisition by the Yankees. I mean, Cashman did a great job picking this guy up. I watched him in the National League for a couple of years. Gamer, true ball player, every day plays hard. And I knew he had the injury, and that hip is kind of funny because sometimes that can really set you back. But he's a hard worker, and obviously this year he stepped up big time. I watched him progress as the year went on, and I said to myself, that was a steal.
Joel, do you think that with what happened with Jorge Posada, or not, excuse me, Posada, but Martin, they kind of slowed the clock on some of the young catchers, that they've got him back this year, they can break in a Montero or a Romine a little slower?
Well, they really needed to slow the clock on those guys. I don't think they thought they were ready, and I think you have a situation a lot like what happened in the late 90s when the Yankees brought in Scott Brocious, and they thought it was just as a place setter until Mike Lowell was ready, and then Brocious played so well that they decided they can trade Lowell. And I think that's what's happening with Russell Martin. I think they see him as a winning player, a guy who helps a pitching staff get through games and gets through seasons. And I think that's going to put their catching in play. And I don't specifically mean Montero, who everyone thinks of as the guy who they'll trade for pitching. I think that Martin and Montero could coexist because Montero will DH a lot. I think this puts Romine in play, and to a lesser extent Cervelli, because you can't get anything big for him. But people look at Romine as a complete everyday catcher, and I think he's a guy who will definitely be in play this winter.
And, John, final quick thought on Montero. Did he do enough at the end of the season, maybe in the postseason, to make the Yankees think, you know, we should probably hang on to this guy?
Yeah, I think so. I think Montero is a terrific offensive player. I know that Brian Cashman invoked the name Manny Ramirez, and I kind of did a double take like Manny Ramirez. But when you saw him hit, he looked like he was very comfortable at the plate, really terrific. I was a little surprised they didn't do more with him in the playoffs, actually. I think he is definitely ready to hit. You know, if they want to use him for trade bait and get a big-time pitcher, that's fine. But you better get a number 1 if you're going to trade Montero. I think the guy can really hit.
Oh, John, no doubt about it. And, Willie, I'll tell you what, you saw that firsthand, one of his first games against the Orioles, and he hit pretty well.
And what a coming-out party it was. I mean, to be able to walk in the Yankee Stadium, man, what, he had 2 standing ovations?
Right.
But, I mean, for him to come out like that and hit the ball solidly to right field, I mean, the way he goes the other way is just tremendous. You like to see that in a young player. He has good late bat speed. You know, he stays in his zone for a long time, but when he gets to the ball, it jumps off his bat. Doesn't look like he has a lot of power, but when he makes contact, the ball just flies off his bat.
All right, so if he's with the team as the backup in spring training, he's going to get some DH reps. We know that. But how important is it with Posada gone for the Yankees to kind of hold that DH spot for some of their other veterans?
Well, I think it is important, especially when you have a veteran ball club. You want to give a guy a day off every once in a while, and that's huge. You know, when you play every day on A-Rod, a Jeter, Teixeira, when you can give a guy a little blow and let him DH and keep that bat in the lineup, very, very important. So I think that it's nice to keep that. There's a luxury for a manager to have that open there.